My hair looks awful. Is this thing on? Do you want some water drinking ASMR? Like, if you're not interested in hearing me talk about National Geographic, you don't have to watch. Hey, I did not want to have to be the one to tell you this, but your gray teeth and bum leg are really bringing down the vibe. I mean, everybody's saying it. Like, I really don't want to have to tell you this, but my name is Cam, and can I just say something real quick? Hello. 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 Welcome. Thank you for coming. I know you didn't want to be here. This is the inaugural episode of Can I Just Say with me, Cameron. This is something I've been wanting to do because I hear you. I know what you're thinking. Not everybody needs a podcast. And I agree to a certain extent, but I was thinking recently about how every once in a while I'll meet somebody who just gets what I'm saying. Like, they know the references I'm making. We've seen the same shows. They know my humor. We just like click, you know? But that does not happen very often. And when it does, it always feels so temporary. So I was hoping that maybe if I could get on here and kind of just be myself, I could find those people. I could find the rest of you weirdos out there who have the same messed up, chronically online, and yet somehow totally out of the loop effect. So if you're out there, I hope you're watching, or I hope you find this. And let's get into it, guys. The very first thing that I wanted to talk about is these things, these videos, these crazy videos that I watched on Vox about National Geographic and how they are changing the game. And mind you, this was 2 a.m. This may or may not have been in a minorly manic, a slight manic episode. So it was 2 a.m. and I was just scrolling on YouTube. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but I kind of feel like I've seen everything on YouTube. Like, YouTube can't think of more things, you know? They can't think of more things to show me. Like, they know that I want. I don't know. I always feel like I never find what I want, and I feel like it's because I've just seen too many freaking videos. Like, I actually am so scared of my screen time. I feel like I literally always have a YouTube video playing in the background, and low-key, I feel like I just rewatch a lot of things these days. Like, I don't watch a whole lot of new content. Anyways, this one video kind of caught my attention. It was called How National Geographic Warps Time. And I was like, interesting. My initial thoughts were like, maybe because it's nostalgic, like that kind of style of thing is like timeless. But then I clicked on it, and they're pretty much talking about the evolution of like the time lapse and slow motion, you know? And I've literally never thought of that. I've always just had those things at my disposal. Like, I watched a ton of the slow-mo guys growing up. I don't know if anybody else, like, I feel like it was like, oh, you have your iPhone 4, what was it, 4S? That was like the thing. I remember, like, my uncle was the first person I knew who got the iPhone 4S, and it was so much fancier. And anyways, we watched the slow-mo guys on YouTube on my uncle's iPhone 4S, and so I have like a slow motion. I kind of understand a few things about it. I remember the slow-mo guys saying that it takes a lot of light, and I have no idea why that is. And then they're always talking about frame rate or whatever and adjusting it. And I don't know. I've always just thought of it as like their mumbo jumbo, the jargon and all of that stuff. But then this video was breaking it down, and it actually just made so much sense. And I was thinking, like, the first person who came up with slow-mo, I don't think they were really thinking. I don't think it was on purpose, you know? I think it was just they were trying to think of how fast they need to crank the reel, and I'm sure it came from trying to be as efficient as possible with like how much film you could fit into the camera, how translating to how long you could record. But anyways, when you play them all back at the same speed with different frames per second, it looks like slow motion, because there's a certain point where you're capturing more frames in a second than our eyes see, I think. And then when you play them back slower than you recorded them, it looks like they're moving in slow motion. Anyways, they were talking about that, and then they started talking about it, how now National Geographic uses it, and I just think back of like a bird, or like seeing shows in like, I don't know, elementary school, like whenever the substitutes were in there and we'd watch a nature documentary, there's always a slow motion with like David Attenborough talking over it. And basically they were saying National Geographic was the first people to capture animals in slow motion, because the conditions have to be so specific back in the days of film photography, especially, to be able to get all of that film. Anyways, if you even care, why would you? Because the equipment was so specialized and so huge, people weren't just like out wandering around in nature. Plus, if you take a few minutes or like a second of film on slow-mo and it's a whole roll of film, that's all gone to waste if you didn't get the shot you need, So they were the first ones to really like push that, and I think the biggest thing is that it took a lot of time and was super wasteful and expensive, but they did it. And so they kind of mastered the art of slow-mo and film. And then with the advent of like real like digital photography, a camera can just take a lot of pictures, and as long as it can have enough storage, then it'll be fine, But then they're also talking about lighting and all of that kind of stuff. But I thought it was a lot more interesting once they started talking about the time lapse, because a time lapse is a picture taken every few minutes, every few seconds, every few days. You can have lots of different styles of a time lapse, but the thing that makes the time lapse look like the thing is growing right in front of your eyes, like I always think of those plants or like the mold time lapses. Anyways, the thing that makes it look like it's just bursting out in front of your eyes is having the exact same consistent lighting and having the right number of pictures taken with the right amount of time in between to make it look like a fluid image. And that was so crazy to me. Like, obviously that's what a time lapse is, but I've never like thought about it like that. I've never thought about like, oh, I'm gonna take a picture of something every 3 minutes. I always just think, I remember like when my iPad got time lapse mode, and I like sat out in front of the kitchen in the oven and I was baking cookies, and I remember watching the time lapse, and you can see my shadow just like walking in and out of the frame. National Geographic, the reason theirs are so artistic and beautiful is because they were mastering the lighting, because if the lighting is different from on one second to another, then it's going to be really obvious. And they were always doing it in the studio because of that consistent lighting need. But now they have some different way of doing it where they can do it outside. So now they can get time lapses, and I think it must be something to do with like the editing, or like, I don't know if it's like artificial intelligence or whatever that edits the pictures so they have like the similar exposure, similar lighting and stuff like that. And that was really mind-blowing to me. I don't know if that'll even be interesting to anybody else, but my mind was so blown when they were showing me this, and I was like, okay, they're literally constantly raising the bar for all of us and doing it flawlessly. Like, it was wild. The other thing they talked about was a hyperlapse, which is like when there's a time lapse, but it's like you're walking through the picture and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know. You've seen it. It's like, I feel like they do it a lot in like the streets of New York with like all of that kind of stuff, and you can see the cars with like the lights and all of that kind of stuff. And that was crazy, and I still don't understand how that works either. It has to be the same kind of technology that like where they can do a time lapse outside, because how like all the time you have lights flashing 1 second and not the next. The thing I was thinking, they didn't really talk very much about it, but I was thinking like if you captured a bunch of videos if you took like a 2-second video every 5 seconds, and then you selected the picture that would give everything the best transition, like maybe that's what they're doing, but it's automated. Like, that would kind of make sense to me. I thought that was so cool, and I was like, I need somebody to tell this to, and I couldn't think of anybody, which is one of the reasons I was really thinking I should do this little thing. And because who cares, you know? And the great thing I think about a podcast is that if nobody freaking cares, they don't have to watch. Like, if you're not interested in hearing me talk about National Geographic, you don't have to watch. I think I'm being a little quiet and demure because I have roommates on this side, and then this wall is to another house on this side. And so I don't want to be like disturbing anyone. And I think it would be even worse if they heard me talking about disturbing them, because then they would just then they would either be like, yeah, shut the hell up, or they might be like, no, it's all good, like, we love it or something. And then either way, it would be a validation of the fact that they can hear me that easily, you know? Like, I think if I talk quiet enough that it doesn't bother them, and they never tell me they can even hear me, then that's like the best possible situation, even if they can't hear me. As long as it's not a nuisance, they never have to say anything. But I don't know. I want to talk at full volume, obviously. Like, nobody wants to listen to my ASMR stories. But maybe that's what I'm gonna start doing. Is it ASMR story time for going to sleep? After I watched all of that stuff, I was thinking about how humans are literally designed to optimize things. Like, that's how our minds, that's what we do. Like, our job, when we see something, a lot of people think, if you're thinking like an engineer, then you just think, how could I make this better, you know? And I think that is so cool. I feel like I want to have that mindset, you know? Obviously, I think that I'm not equipped to do that kind of a thing in a photography sense. Like, I'm not gonna create the new hyperlapse or whatever, but in whatever I do go into, I want to be so good at it that I can actually make it better. Like, right now my plan is to pursue dentistry, and I've been thinking about, like, how could I do it better? What could I do that other people aren't already doing? And I'm not even a dentist yet, you know? I still haven't even gotten into school, which I should really probably be working on right now instead of doing this. One thing I'm really passionate about is helping kids with special needs, and I feel like that's something that is not optimized yet, you know? Like, hasn't been a person who's found ways to help kids who might be a little bitey or uncomfortable with having somebody's hands in their mouths, which I think is totally understandable. And so I would love to be a part of that kind of thing, you know? And I don't think I'm going to be the next big thing in the world, like, but I think it's so cool that we kind of have that in every sense. Like, we're always trying to make things better. And the other thing I started thinking about was, like, sometimes people flop at that, you know? Like, on Shark Tank, every once in a while you watch it, and it's like trying to solve a problem that nobody else has had. One of those things that I had just been seeing today. One of those things I just been seeing. It was Danny Gonzalez, and he was talking about inventions that are almost cool, and I felt like that was a very good example of, like, trying to make things better that are already more than good enough. Like, well, or maybe as good as they need to be, really. So, like, they're trying to design, ooh, I got a notification. They're trying to design a robot horse. And I was like, okay, what's wrong with normal horses? That, like, what's a problem that wouldn't be solved, you know? And, like, they have renewable energy in a horse, you know? You don't need it to be hydrogen powered like this one is. Like, what do you do when your hydrogen battery or whatever is dead? I don't know how hydrogen power works. Why is that any better than a horse who, yeah, they get tired at the end of the day or whatever, or, like, you have to stop so they can eat, but then they recharge themselves and they're ready to go, you know? I think that is very interesting. Like, why do we care to try and optimize these things? And another thing was, somebody had invented a suit that was supposed to be waterproof, and their justification for it was, like, if you are most people who work in an office aren't getting enough exercise, so if you have a waterproof suit, then you can go straight from the office to the pool and then come back to the office like nothing happened. It's like, okay, but also it's not waterproof. Like in the pictures they were showing, it literally looked see through. It was because it was like soaking wet. Um, but stuff like that, I think that is like one of our flaws as a species is like, why do we do stuff like that? Why do we try and solve problems that don't exist, you know? And I kind of have two thoughts on that. The first one is that maybe it was a problem for the person who invented it, you know, or maybe they're aware that the problem isn't there for people because there are things that we don't even think of as problems, you know, like back before the days of slow motion, people were just so amazed that we even could film things that they probably didn't even care. They probably didn't even think about trying to watch it in slow motion. What I was saying is, maybe the person who invented the swimsuit suit thing, maybe they thought like, oh yeah, this is a problem people don't even know they have, and their life will be so much better with it. So that's interesting to me, but like I get that part of it, but wouldn't you try, and if it doesn't work you wouldn't like put it out there, you know, like you wouldn't put product images out of it if it out there of it if it was just not doing what you wanted it to do. Like that's the thing that's interesting. But I don't know, I don't, there's certain limitations to what we can do, you know, like we, but that's the thing, we're all about pushing limits. So I don't know. Was wondering if like I was thinking about AI. I was like, AI is something that we've made to try and optimize our lives, right? It can help you do a billion different things. It's literally like an assistant in everything but the physical sense. Um, but then I was thinking, what about when AI tries to start optimizing itself for us? At what point will it transcend what we can comprehend? And then I know you're probably thinking I'm sounding a little woo woo wee wee, but I don't know. These are the kind of things that keep me up at night. It was just blowing my mind. And I am kind of curious if that will ever happen with AI. If it starts optimizing itself, then at some point will it be so much better than us? And that's the kind of thing that, like, if my dad was telling me that, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, Dad. But I could see why one might think that based on how amazing AI is. And that's like, it's, I don't know, that kind of thought is something that I feel like every generation has dealt with. Like when the internet was invented, everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is going to kill us. Y2K is coming. And low key, I could see why they might think that, you know? And now, like looking back, it's like, obviously not. That didn't happen. Obviously, that was a silly thing to think, but they didn't know that. How were they supposed to know that the internet was going to turn people into this? And I don't know. AI is going to be like RuPaul in that video where she's like, I've finally got this bitch. I finally got this bitch. Child, anyways. At what point are things just good enough, you know? And then the other thing I was thinking is when your needs are not all met, you aren't thinking about that kind of stuff. Like when you are always, like if you were back in the hunter gatherer days, you probably weren't thinking about if you could capture something in a picture because you were thinking about, am I going to eat? Am I going to find enough food for my family? Is something trying to kill me, you know? And I think it's so like it's such a privileged point of view to be able to sit here and be like, my life is pretty good, but I wish I had a swimsuit that I could wear in the pool. Like that's such coming from such a place of privilege, you know? And then that makes me think like, are all of these things that are being invented all the time only invented by rich people because they have no other problems but like whether or not they can swim? But then they advertise it as being for the working class and be like, you don't have time, I'm always in a meeting. But I guess maybe CEOs are, but then CEOs aren't probably inventors. But maybe people come up with an idea and then pitch it to somebody else and then pay them to do it. That sounds like something that could be more true. um I wish I had that engineering kind of brain in like the sense that like I in the sense that no in the sense that I wish I could have the gusto to actually learn how to use all of those like computer programs and all of that kind of stuff. Like that's crazy. That's pretty awesome. And that's the other thing is like I'm sure I could, but I don't want to. Like I'm so happy that other people have that, and I kind of wish that I did, but at the same time I'm not willing to put in the work that it takes to do that because I don't think it would be fun for me. That's so interesting to me is that everybody's lives, like I feel like that's the thing we always say, like, oh my gosh, we had this company meeting the other day, and we were talking about they had a Dr. Seuss quote maybe, and it's like there's only one of you, so be yourself. You know, that millennial kind of quote, but it's actually so true. There's nobody else who's gone through every experience that you've gone through. And that is another thing that just like, oh my God, that blows my mind. Like, nobody else has, yeah, nobody else's life is exactly like you. And I feel like that's why we all have a little bit of a different path that we follow, you know? And then I was thinking about how I read somewhere that, like, if you don't agree with a person, the reason it's so bothersome to you is because you would never think that, you know? You would never do that. You would never say that. You would never think that. And that is like, that's a crazy thing to me, to think about it like that at that level. Because when you think about it, it's like, oh, there comes a point where one, fundamentally, you and another person's belief on a thing are just going to be separated. Like, you're never going to agree because your life experiences are so different. And that's like, this always happens to me is like I get overthinking about things that are just intuitive and just make sense. But then I'm like, okay, that's what people do. That's what we're here to do is like we see an ant hill and we're like, I wonder how that was made. And then we study ants. And then we're like, wow, this ant can move. How can it move? And then we go deeper and we study that, you know? And so like, I don't know. That's the question though. It's like, is that what we're here to do? Are we here to, and at what point should it stop? At what point is it good enough, you know? At what point do we know enough? And I think that there comes a point where we accept that we can't understand, you know? And I think that's where the idea of God comes in because there's a certain point of being, of like, there's a certain point in everything where you just decide that it's out of your control, you know? There's, it's, some people call it being content. Other people are like, it's out of my hands and into God's, you know? The idea of God is just basically the accepting the thought that how miraculous life is, everything um, isn't a coincidence, really, you know? And that it couldn't happen without some cosmic intervention. And it's amazing that as we learn more about and we like come to understand it, I feel like that's why there's been a decrease in religious people in the last like 200 years. I don't know. Is just because we are now studying things in a point of view where we are understanding things that we never thought we'd understand. And therefore, we accept that we can do a thing like that, you know? But maybe that's the point where we decide it's good enough is once everybody is, I don't know, content with the situation that we're in, or the majority of people are content with the situation they're in, then they just leave it to, that's where they start believing in God. And so I wonder if, like, if you looked at all the careers in the world, like, and how religious the majority of people identified in those, if they would say, if there would be fewer people who are engineers and stuff like that who are not religious, you know, or who are religious, like fewer numbers who are religious. But then it's like, that, what is that supposed to mean? That dumb people like believe in God and smart people don't? Because I don't think that's the case at all. Some food for thought there. Yeah, I think it's interesting that at some point we just decide that we don't understand, and some people feel that that is God. Um, the person, like, God is transcends what we can know, you know? Like, to me, being gay is a fundamental truth about me that I have no choice over, you know? Whether or not you believe that, that's great, but I know that I am gay, and I don't believe that God would want me to push all of that away and not be myself and be as depressed as I was when I was doing that. You know, like before I came out, I was more depressed than I had ever been because I was constantly thinking about, oh, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, gay, I'm gay, I'm gay. That's like, and well, I think what I was really thinking is like my future is not going to be what I want it to be, you know, because I grew up wanting to be with a girl and to get married and to have a family because that's the only way to become like God, you know? So I thought it was not an option, and all of a sudden it was no longer an option for me. Or like when I came to accept that I was gay, that it was no longer an option. So then it's like, what's the point? What's the point of being alive? And then they like, what I was told is you'll be rewarded, you know, in heaven. Like you'll have a chance after to be with your eternal companion. So then you're just saying that being who I fundamentally am and who I was made to be, like the way my brain is wired, like who I am at the matter of my being is just a temptation. Like that makes me feel very sad to think about. Sorry, this is a little heavy, but that's how I feel about control. And oh, my roommate's getting his lunch. I just had to accept that my house is a little noisy, and that's okay. And I am filming this in my little bedroom in a cheap apartment, so this just is my reality for now, and I'm at peace with that. I'm at peace with that. Hakuna Matata. Trisha Paytas. Oh yeah, being gay and religious. And that's enough of that. That's, I think, just one of the things it's another thing that keeps me up at night. Maybe that's what I should call this, is the Up at Night podcast, but I'm sure that already exists. Anyways, I am going to go play tennis with my friend, so I need to wrap it up. I'm sorry there's no satisfying conclusion or anything, but I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. If you did, please let me know by liking, subscribing, commenting. Let me know if there's anything that keeps you up at night that I could talk more about. If you found any of this at all relatable, I am glad, and I hope that more people like us can find each other and have fun together. So, anyways, peace out. Goodbye. Oh. Goodbye. 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 With the hammer, roll up on the mobs, get the slamming boom. When I slam them, the bodies went, oh we do, we Scooby Doo, how I move with the body shaggy. We move.